How does someone go from the strictest of the photographic arts, being photojournalism, to building a body of work that is based in might arguably be the most abstract approach to photography that there is? Welcome to Pixels, where we explore the heart and art of photography. I'm Beth Bilo. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm pleased to welcome Kaisa Siren to the conversation today. From her home base in the Arctic Circle, Kaisa has explored both far afield and close to home. Our conversation runs the gamut, as a lot of these Pixels conversations do. We talk a little bit about how she got into ICM, or intentional camera movement, as a way to change up her creative energy, how to make images with intention, and how ICM can help to make the invisible visible. Kaisa is a photographic artist and makes her soul landscape visible with intentional camera movement, using northern sceneries of Finland as her backdrop. She focuses on themes related to the seasons of Lapland and the sensitivity of nature. She lives in Rovaniemi at the Arctic Circle in Lapland, Finland, where she works as a freelance photographer. She is widely published in various Finnish magazines and newspapers and has had several solo and group exhibitions in Finland, Sweden, Denmark, New York, Scotland, and Germany. She has been a regular contributor to the ICM PhotoMag from its very beginning, and she is a co-founder of the ICM PhotoMag Network community and the ICM Photo Academy, as well as teaching courses on ICM photography, both in person and online. She has been a co-leader of the New Beginnings workshops from their very beginning in 2021, and I was a participant in one of those workshops, and as I mentioned at the top of our interview, can vouch for how transformative that experience was. And I'll have links to those resources in the show description. A very special thank you to my wonderful video editor, Alex Armitage, and to Nick Stover of Nature Photography Classes and their Inspired Creator Grant, which is a partial supporter of this channel. You can learn more and submit your own application at naturephotographyclasses.com/inspired-creator. Please let Kaisa and I know what you find most meaningful in this conversation. There are a couple of places where I know that you're going to hear something and think, I don't know if I agree with that, or yeah, that sounds exactly what I've been thinking. So I would love to know what your thoughts are on what we talk about, particularly around the difference between being a photographer and being an artist. So your likes and your shares are always welcome. Please do subscribe and be notified of future episodes. If you're listening to this on an audio-only platform, you can find the images that we're discussing at pixelspodcast.com. So with that, on to the conversation. Hi, Kaisa. It is so good to see you. Welcome to Pixels.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thanks for the invitation and this opportunity. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
Well, I'm delighted too, because it's been a few years since we've connected in real time. I had the pleasure of being part of one of your ICM online courses. I think it was back in 2021 or maybe 22. I'm not sure, but with Stephanie Johnson and Morag Patterson. Is it Patterson or Peterson? Patterson. I meant to look that up, so I'm glad. And it was a truly transformative experience for me. It really, I'll just share really quickly. What it marked for me was the beginning of being able to see my images more as a body of work. Because we created that series, I think we were supposed to create something of like 4 to 6 images that had something that tied them together. And that really kickstarted my brain and being able to think about not just one-off images, but how to create something cohesive. So I'm, in addition to the ICM piece, so I'm forever grateful. So I'm so glad that you're here. I just wanted to start with that.
I'm glad to hear that, because it's a big leap from doing just one image, just shooting whatever comes up, and oh yeah, there's a bird and there's a tree and whatever, and that looks nice, a sunset. But then it really lifts your thinking into a second level when you have to start to work, when you're able to start to work on a series and put a body of work together.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really, I'm really glad to hear what you said. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 You're welcome. So that's making me smile today. I'm wondering what's making you smile today.
Well, the weather. I'm not British, but I like to discuss weather.
It's all about the weather.
Yeah, because this December has been really tough. I live at the Arctic Circle, so in northern part of Finland, and usually winter starts here beginning of November. But of course, now with everything what goes on in the world, it doesn't anymore, and weather is unpredictable.
Yeah.
And we didn't get permanent snow until about 20th of December.
Wow. And that's
Which is like
late, right?
6 weeks late. And that affects my mentality and my mood a lot. Now we have snow, not as much as we should have, but at least it looks like winter. And today and yesterday it has been cold, and tomorrow it's going to be even colder. So the light and the colors are beautiful, and it feels like winter. And this time of the year, when the day is at its shortest, this is really like my soul landscape. So that makes me smile. I'm like, yes, winter's here and I'm at home.
Yes. 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 I mean, on so many levels, it sounds like both in terms of the earth and like relief that the cycles of the season are doing what they're supposed to do, as well as like just your own mental and emotional state and how you're experiencing your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, since the day is so short, snow brings you light.
Yes.
So it's super important.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. It brings reflection of anything that's
So
there.
we really need it. It's not just that we want it, we need it. So yeah, that makes me smile.
Oh, good. Well, I could use some of that brightness. We have a little bit of snow here in West Michigan. It's one of these days my husband will describe as it's like you're living inside a golf ball or a ping pong ball because it's just gray everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm envious of your colors and and what you're experiencing. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to talk a little bit as we dive in here about something I read in your bio, and as I mentioned in the intro, I've experienced you as an ICM intentional camera movement artist, and in your online bio you write, I now understand that I have been unseen in my childhood, which has led to a feeling a bit of an outsider as an adult. ICM provides a way to bring the unseen feelings and suppressed emotions visible. So I want to use that as an entree into a conversation about how you came to ICM, because I'm guessing you started with traditional photography and that this was something that you evolved into. And then secondly, how do you experience ICM as making the invisible visible?
I am a photojournalist as my profession. So I studied photography and photojournalism for 4 years in Toronto, in Canada. So of course, my photography has been for years and years documenting, recording. And I work for newspapers and magazines at the moment and have worked for a long, long time. And of course, everything you do for documentary is documenting the real, and you must not change anything.
Yes.
And you have all these rules, and everything must be as is, which is fair. I appreciate that. And I still enjoy it, and it's a lot of fun. ICM for me has given the freedom that I have wanted to express myself and express my art and my inner feelings. So I was looking for a long time. I worked as photojournalist and I was looking for personal projects. And I always did something like, okay, I'm going to photograph all the people who are 100 years old in Lapland. And then I documented then. And then all of my personal projects were like extension of my work. And it didn't feel right. It felt like it doesn't bring anything new to me. It doesn't charge my batteries. I still want to do photography on my free time. But all the personal projects I created, it was just an extension of my work, and I didn't enjoy that. And then I came across ICM while I was traveling in Iceland in 2004. And the weather was really bad. It was cloudy. We were supposed to see all these wonderful scenery, glaciers and mountains and whatever. And all we saw was gray.
Like the ping pong ball.
Yeah, like the ping pong ball. So what I did is I started to entertain myself taking pictures out of the bus window of the ground, of the soil, because soil in Iceland has wonderful colors. So I decided to concentrate on that, and I was experimenting with different speeds, shutter speeds, and I created these images with long exposure from the moving car, from the bus. And that's how I kind of discovered that, hey, this is something that really brings me the freedom. It kind of liberates me from the documentary part of my work and photography. And that's how I realized that it gives me reloads my energy, which I want to do through art. And at the time, photography was the only form of art I was doing. So I didn't even think of much else. I did a little bit of painting already at that time, but that's how I came across ICM.
Nice. At the time, what did you make of your images, and in terms of how did you share them? Like what was your relationship to them with regard to how it fit into the rest of your work and what people maybe expected from you?
Well, of course, in 2004, when I started to do this, there was no social media, or at least not as the way it is in our lives today. And I wasn't part of it. So I didn't share them. Actually, the images I did take in Iceland, I showed to an interior designer here in my town, and she was redesigning a restaurant. And they bought, I think, 10 pieces to the restaurant wall. And I was like, this must be something. I didn't even kind of grasp what I had done or what I had created. I thought that I liked them myself, but then when someone else was interested, I was like, oh, this must be something else.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, especially because back in 2004, it was probably a relatively new in terms of being presented that way. And some people, even now, even knowing what it is, don't know quite how to react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. People try to feel they need to understand it. Like many people who are not used to looking at art, they feel that they can't take art into their lives because they don't understand it. They can't go to a gallery to see paintings because they are afraid they don't understand the paintings and the artwork. And that's not the thing. You don't need to understand. You pick whatever you get from it. You either get something from a piece of art or you don't. And if you don't, that's fine. It's not a problem. You go to the next one and see something else you like.
Yeah. That's been one of the most liberating things for me whenever I visit a museum now, especially a large one, and I only have, a certain number of hours. I've given myself permission to not have to look at every single painting in the gallery. I will scan, I will see what attracts me, I will go to that, spend some time with that, and then move on. And there's something very liberating about that. And I think that can be true even with our photography. Like, not everything has to be documented or photographed. It doesn't have to have time spent with it. It's more about like what draws you in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I believe in that. And that's the nice thing about social media is that, for example, Instagram, you can decide who you want to follow. So you you can pretty much anticipate that the work you see is something that inspires you and gives you ideas for your own work, and you like it.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a pin in what you mentioned about painting, and
Yeah.
hope that we come back to that later. And I know from us chatting before that there were some images that kind of illustrate what you were just talking about,
Yeah.
with your entree into ICM. So maybe I'll pull those up, and we can even start talking about like those pivot pixels that represent, this shift in your journey. And I'm curious, and maybe this is a related question to what we were talking about before, but you went from, and you're still doing, but, photojournalism, which I think of as like the strictest documentarian version of photography that there is, to something that is so completely abstract that it has no, it's based in reality, but it has no basis in reality. I'm not sure how to put that, but what do you find in terms of maybe like other photojournalists and whatnot? Like, do you find that they also try to find other ways to express themselves that break away from that more literal interpretation of a scene?
I have seen that a little bit. I think it's coming more and more now. And I have only followed a few Finnish photojournalists, some people I know. I have seen that they also experiment with some creative techniques, so they have come to ICM, or that they do artistic projects alongside with their photojournalist career. But I also see that there are a few brave ones who have left the photojournalism behind altogether and jumped totally into the artistic world. So there are some of those also. Not that it's a trend, but there is more movement into that direction. But I think that there are like two kinds of, there are photographers and then there are artists who work as photojournalists. And those who are photographers, it's enough for them that they go to work and they take the pictures and they go to the photojournalism site and they do their work and they come back home and then they do something else. They go and play golf or whatever, exercise or whatever it is. And then there are artists who may not even know yet that they are artists, who haven't discovered themselves. But they are the ones who seek the boundaries and they go, beyond the photojournalism little by little, or they jump altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that perspective. Because it's also bringing up a bit about a conversation I've had with a few other guests around, are you a photographer or are you an artist? Is there a difference? Does it matter? Yeah.
Well, I feel that if you have some personal intent in your work, then you are an artist. That's the artistry part that comes into your work. But if you go to work as a photographer to record, if I was doing real estate photography, which would be terrible.
Not your cup of tea.
No, but imagine that you would do real estate photography every day. You go and you take apartments and houses and whatever, and you're happy with that, and it brings you income. It's your work. You work as a photographer who takes pictures of apartments. It's not much artistry about that. Then I would call myself a photographer in that case. But if I do something that has my inner intent that I want to put into pictures, I want to express something about myself or the world or make a comment, then I think that's more of an artist speaking there.
Yeah. That's an interesting distinction that I hadn't thought about before, where you might say a photographer is one who is documenting, but even more than that, like what you're pointing your camera at is not necessarily of your choosing. Whereas an artist, you are completely at choice. And of course it's not a clean distinction. And I'm sure some people would debate, argue with that particular perspective, but it's one way of it's one possible way of thinking about.
Yeah, exactly. Tomorrow I'm going on a photo shoot to take pictures for a magazine about a community leader. So I take, this is what she looks like, this is her hobby, this is her work, da da da. I don't feel much like an artist, even though I can put my perspective in terms of, do I use a wide angle or a long lens, or do I use lights this or that way, or whatever. That's kind of creativity I put into it, but I don't feel like I'm a great artist who goes and takes this portrait of this person.
Yeah.
It's documentary. This is what the person looks like, kind of thing. I also feel a little bit controversial about nature photography, because a lot of people call nature photography, or call themselves artists as they go and do nature photography. If I go and photograph penguins, and I just do them the way I do my photojournalism, is that art? When does it become art? When I take portraits of penguins and show that this is what a penguin looks like. Is it art or is it photography? What is my intent there? Is my intent to show that this is what a penguin looks like, or is my intent there to show the struggle that the penguins have with the climate change, and how does that show in the image? So that's also a question I ponder many times, that are all nature photographers artists?
Good question. And I'm guessing anyone who's watching this and you have thoughts about that, share in the comments what you think. Because I'm sure that could be a healthy debate.
Important. I'm not saying that it's less important to do the documentary work. It is important. But I have also ran a lot of times into photographs by nature photos, which artists have made, which I don't feel they are art as such. I feel they are more documentary.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make them any less valuable. I'm not saying that. They're just as valuable.
Well, that's where, I wonder if you were to talk to that photographer, if they would say, well, here was my intent, or here's how I was approaching it from an artist perspective. Sometimes maybe we don't see it and they feel it. And so then that becomes like, who decides if it's art or documentary?
And I guess no one needs to decide. It's not something that we need to decide, but I personally feel that when you have a big intention and you are able to put that into your work, it feels more art.
I think that's, I would agree with that art is partly defined by intention. Can you have art without intention? I don't know.
I don't know. I saw an ad in Instagram yesterday. Some artist was selling a course, and she was saying that she's a digital artist and she has so and so much experience. And when you buy this course, in 15 hours, you can become a great painter when you do these exercises and you follow my course. And I felt like, I don't want to become a great painter in 15 hours. I want to go through the path, I want to do my own mistakes, and I want to learn from that. Not that I'm against courses, not at all, but I don't want to become something in 15 hours. I want to become something in 15 years, so that I really put a lot of work and enthusiasm and experience into what I'm doing. I want to learn everything. I really learn doing by learning, not in 15 hours.
Anything worth doing, can you really do it in 15 hours, especially when it comes to an artistic or creative pursuit?
Especially painting, if you've never done that before.
Right. I know, exactly. So this first image that we're looking at here, I know is a family project. Can you tell us a little bit about this and
Yeah.
how it fits into your ICM journey?
Yeah. So this is a portrait series of my brother. So I come from a family of 7 children. I'm the youngest one, and I have a 16-year age difference with my eldest sister. We are 6 girls, and my brother is in the middle. And
I bet you've got lots of
yes,
stories.
you can ask him how he feels about it.
Exactly.
But about 3 years ago, I got this idea that I want to make a series of images that portray the character of my family members. We did so that we had Zoom meetings with all 7 of us, and then we discussed each meeting one person. And I had a series of questions I asked, and everyone answered the same questions. And then I also had one-to-one conversations. And then I went out to work, and I tried to put a series together which would portray the person and their character and the personality. And first I decided that there would be only one picture of the person, and the others would be nature images or abstract images or whatever is needed to visualize that person. But in this case, in my brother's case, I have 3 images of him.
Yeah.
In here. But it was really one way to visualize the unseen, because if you say that someone is shy, for example, what does shy look like? Or someone is extrovert or smart or whatever. So it was a real challenge. And if I was to take a traditional image of a shy, I think it would have been really, really difficult. But with ICM, because you blur things and you build layers with light and colors and shadows, you start to create this world and mood that just expands the imagination of the viewer.
Yeah.
And the viewer always brings something to the series and to the images and their own story. And I didn't write any text at all, so it's just the images. And then I decided that the viewer, they can write up the story and what kind of person is in their own minds. But especially in this series, the image which is on the top right-hand corner, which is this close-up, that one.
Yep.
I think that is probably in this series the one that is the best example of visualizing the unseen, which you can do with ICM. Because my brother said, okay, now I tell you what he feels like.
Go for it.
I don't know if it's because he's the only guy, but I think there are other reasons. But he says that in his life he has felt a lot and long times that he's like a person under ice, and there is only like a little hole, like a little breathing hole that keeps him alive. And I was wondering that it was such a powerful statement, and it was a bit of a surprise actually when he told me this. And I was like, how can I visualize that? How can you visualize that? And then I ended up getting this image on the top right-hand corner where you have this, it's a tree trunk. Not that it makes any, I don't know if it's important, but I took a picture of this tree trunk, and for me, it's like a face.
Yeah.
And it's like a face behind something. So I realized that, hey, this is just the image I need. It's the face under the ice. It's something you're looking through the layer of ice in front of the person who's lying there and kind of saying, let me out.
Yeah, there's because I think we're conditioned to see faces, like that's
Yeah,
how we're hardwired. I immediately saw a face and
yeah,
an
yeah,
eye and like the bridge of the nose, and
exactly. Yeah,
there's there's some tension in that, if I could say, even a little bit of terror
yeah,
um,
yeah.
that that I feel when I look at it. So
Good. Yes, and the tension is a good word because I'm sure that's what he has felt. There has been tension, uh, terror, maybe.
that might be over dramatic, but he
But
probably had moments of terror.
I'm sure desperate anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because he's the only guy with the seven of us, six girls, but it's because he's a very sensitive, vulnerable person and very creative, and he hasn't been able to express himself creatively. So
Yeah.
he has really been like in a ping pong ball.
Yes. Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I think since he was the only guy, my parents' expectations were for him to do something like an academic career or something like that, not an artistic career. But he's a super talented musician and a writer, and he was never
Yeah.
able to get to that. So I'm sure that has made him feel like he's barely able to breathe.
Yeah. Well, that breaks my heart.
And, yeah, yeah, it broke my heart too when he said that because I had never realized it before. But that's the kind of way that um, visualizing the unseen. And then another thing, the middle one in the lower row, when my brother retired, he said that he's starting to see light in his life because now he has able to play. He plays organ and he has music back in his life and so on.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get this image where you can sort of see a transition from dark to light. I see very strongly a person there on the left hand side.
Yeah.
It's not, there is no person in the original subject at all. This is taken in my bathroom, actually, at my home, where
I
light
love it.
shines on the tile, on the ceramic tiles, which are glossy. Miraculously, I made a camera movement and the person is there, but it really
Yeah.
shows me like he is moving from darkness into light. And those are the
Yeah.
kind of things that I personally feel would be very difficult to express in traditional photography, the way that it wouldn't explain too much. If you take this kind of an image in traditional way, it's self-explanatory very easily.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make the imagination of the viewer go as much as this can do. But of course,
Yeah.
I admit that these are not easy. And ICM is not easy. You have to work. You have to make yourself work and put your soul into it.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's part of what, like we were talking about before, where people don't always know how to respond to it. I think
yeah,
it's partly because it implores you to engage with it. You cannot be passive. You have to
yeah,
be an active participant in that art,
yes,
and that
yeah,
demands something of us.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's why I like it. And
Yeah,
some people
yeah,
like it and some people don't, but that's perfectly fine with me. I don't mind. If
yeah,
people don't like my work, it's fine. I don't like
yeah.
everyone's work. So we
Right.
have the right.
So you can say the feeling is mutual.
Yeah.
It is, I do think that, like, ICM, people like us that have a more abstract approach, it's even more, again, like, we're more called maybe to develop that thicker skin, or that even more trust and confidence in our intent, so that if people are choosing not to engage or don't like it, we're like, that's fine,
Yeah,
that's okay,
yeah,
because
exactly.
I know what I was trying to communicate, and I know how it makes me feel, and that's what is most important to me.
Yeah, yeah. And most important is that I get it out of myself.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not trapped beneath the ice,
yeah,
where you
yeah,
can't breathe. You've got to
yeah,
you've
yeah.
got to breathe.
Exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I know you've got a couple more images here that are about like making that invisible visible.
Yes.
Um,
Well, the next two are from a series called Woodwide Web,
mhm.
and it's based on a book called Secret Life of Trees,
Yes.
and that's written by a German naturalist called Peter Wolleben. And he discusses in the book how trees communicate with one another, how they form communities, and how they take care of their elderly and their offspring, and how they warn one another, and how they need each other, and so on. So what I did is I picked a few things from the book, and then I wanted to make them visual. But again, traditional photography would have been very difficult. I mean, for example, this image is called the alarm system. So how do you visualize that trees alarm each other through their root systems? And what he says as an example in the book is that there's an insect attack in a forest.
Mhm.
The trees communicate to other trees on the other side of the forest that start to secrete these tannins into your leaves because there are insects coming and they don't like this tannin, so they leave you alone. How do you communicate? How do you visualize that?
Yeah.
And you can't visualize that in a traditional photograph. You can't even see the roots. So
Mhm.
this was
Mhm.
actually the most difficult image to do, to show how they communicate with the root systems. I ended up with this image, and I think that the sparks of light are like the alarm, like
Mhm.
alarm sound is going off. And then the
Yeah.
color is also alarming. And I think there's a lot of information being transferred here from one to the other. And you can see
Yeah.
that there are trees there. So I ended
Yeah.
up with this image to visualize the alarm system.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I don't necessarily always like to get into like the technical aspect of things, but I do have to ask because I have a feeling anyone who's watching this that would see this image would say, well, what is that orange yellow? Is that autumn leaves? Or, is this a single image or a composite? Can you tell us maybe a little bit about like the creative behind the scenes on this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, absolutely. I want to emphasize that all of my images are single exposures done in camera because
Mm-hmm.
I use a system that doesn't allow multiple exposures in camera.
Ah,
So
okay.
everything is in camera single. I don't do composites in Photoshop or post processing because I want to spend more time outdoors than with the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an image turned upside down. So
Oh.
what's the orange and red and the yellowish light is sunlight, and this is taken in January, like about early January, when the
Mm-hmm.
sun is very, very, very low and it hits the trees at a low angle, and the weather is cold and the colors are very powerful. Sunlight on the top of the tree branches, image turned upside down. And uh, I don't remember what the camera movement or what the shutter speed was, but I used zero
Mm-hmm.
point 0.6 seconds a lot. And
Yeah. Yeah.
taken right out of my backyard from my
Yeah.
living room window.
I am so there are multiple things I love about what you just shared, including right out your back room, back window,
Yeah,
and that it's upside down
yeah.
because I would not have guessed. But now that you say that, it's like I can sort of see it, but it's still, my brain has already had this imprint that I'm looking at the ground and then the sky
Yeah.
and you're just reminding us like that there are like don't just take even an abstract, even an ICM, don't just take it at face value. Don't take the scene at face value. What if
Yeah.
the sky was the ground?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. And that's the nice thing about art is you can do anything. But
Yeah,
had this been a documentary photograph, you couldn't turn it upside down because it has to be the way it is.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Um,
And this is from the same series. This is called Grief of the Trees, which
mhm.
is something that Wolleben discusses in the book. He explains that trees suffer when they lose their community members, whether it's falling down because they are so old or they've been cut down or the wind takes them down or whatever the reason. So the
Mhm.
trees actually grieve. He doesn't say in the book, what do the trees look like? How do you know that they grieve? But this was my interpretation.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think there is something very melancholy about this picture.
yes, I
And
agree.
this one guy on the right hand side, he's like, is he the one who's going or is he falling down because someone else went?
Right, right. Yeah, that's a very good point because the trees before it are slowly sort of bending
Yeah,
towards.
yeah,
And so I even see them as like trying to help the tree that is
yeah, yeah, that's
closer
right.
to the ground.
And that is also the feeling we humans often have when we have grief. If the grief
Hmm.
is very strong, it's eventually you give in for the
Yeah,
grief. You either
yeah,
win it or you give in and you feel totally helpless and powerless and that you don't have any energy anymore. You give up.
yeah, yeah.
And this is the kind of feeling I have with this image as well. Yeah.
So tell us about this particular one that's part of the pivot for you.
Yes. Um, like I said, I started doing ICM in 2004, but I didn't start to do it as my full time artistic expression. I did it time to time, like people often do. They discover
Hmm.
ICM and they take a few images and then they feel, oh, this is fun, but it's difficult and, and whatnot. They leave it for some time and then they come back to it. And that's kind of the way I was also working.
Hmm.
But then when 2017, I bought this gallery house, which is near my home. That was the time when I was really frustrated with all of these personal projects, these documentary projects I had been looking for and doing. And I really wanted to find my own artistic expression, way to express myself. And then I decided that I go back, I start to do ICM like full force because I knew
Right.
that I like it and I knew that the potential there was. And I also, at that point, realized that I am a real colorist. I had
Mm-hmm.
thought for a long time that I'm like a black and white photographer. Coming back from my school, when I studied photography, everything was done black and white at the time. And then I worked in a
Yeah.
newspaper, which was all black and white. So and black and white was so much appreciated.
Hmm.
But by the time 2017, when I bought the gallery house, and it really gave me a big boost for my own artistic career. I also realized that I am really a colorist, and everything I do revolves around color. Everything I see is color first, and everything else after.
Hmm.
And these three images that are here, they are all from my first exhibition, which I held in the gallery house I bought. All three of these, and the first two are from Norway, and then the third one again is from my backyard.
Yeah.
And the way I built the exhibition in my gallery house, I have 7 different rooms here. So I made each room a different color. And
Cool.
that was such a pivoting point for me that I realized that now I found my path. And
Hmm.
I left everything else and I have fully concentrated on ICM and the colors since.
Yeah. How much do you feel like that and I don't know how much was like digital on your screen, how much time you spent, like with the computer and seeing your images digitally versus when you bought the art house and you had the gallery space and you could physically place them. Do you feel like that contributed at all to your that clarity?
I think it did, in terms of being able to define which images work printed large. When I went to school and studied photography, everything was printed. So I'm very used to having images printed out. But then, of course, when digital cameras came around, that all disappeared. And then we just started to look at the images on the computer screen. I had participated in exhibitions since 2001. So I've done a lot of exhibitions, and I have done a lot of printing also from 2001. So alongside with the digital working, but maybe since the gallery has a lot of space and big wall spaces, and I was able to print large, it did affect a little bit of being able to judge the images, which work, which don't, which work together, and so on. But not a huge leap, since I do have the printing history already.
So that question is coming from, my own experience of being like 90% digital and always hearing about the importance of printing our images. That's just a drum that I hear people beating a lot. And for the reasons you just said, you can see how they work together, and you just have a different relationship to them, I believe, when they're physical. I appreciate that. Yeah. With your printing, since that was already part of your relationship to photography, it wouldn't have been as much of a transition. But for somebody like me, it would be like, probably blow my mind if I saw, had that kind of experience. So it's a good reminder to me, like 2025, the year of printing. Probably. Yeah. I would love, before we pivot back to, this particular image that we're looking at now, actually, from what I understand, pertains to my next question, which is about light and where you live, because it's a very, there aren't a ton of places in the world that have the kind of light you do. And I wanted to give folks just a little bit of context. And I found this on through some research that I did on Lapland, found a description on a site that is promoting it as a filming destination. And it said, our distinct and stunning quality of light attracts filmmakers from all over the world. In summer, we have a golden hour that lasts all night. Autumn nights are lit up with dancing sky fire. And winter packs a 1-2 punch of polar night and blinding snowshine. So what is all of this? How does this influence you as a photographer?
A lot.
I can imagine.
Everything revolves around that. I find that whatever the project is I'm working on, the light and the colors that I have here around me, it's always involved. Like the one I was doing on my siblings, the 7 siblings project, it had in a way nothing to do with the light and the colors or where I am. But still, they appear there in all of the series.
Yes.
So it's very, very special. And I'm so happy that I'm able to see that and understand that it's unique and special. And I'm able to utilize that light and the contrast. And what is wonderful about where I am is that we, instead of having 4 seasons, we have 8 seasons. So in between summer and fall, we have a short season that we call autumn summer. And then in the winter, we have the polar night when the sun doesn't rise. But then March, April, it's nothing but sun, but we still have full winter. So the seasons, they are completely different from one another, even though somewhere else they are called winter.
Right.
So, and they go by very fast, of course. So the seasons change very quickly here, and you have to be kind of alert all the time. Like now, it's beginning of January when we are recording this, and the polar night is over very, very soon. And I feel like, oh no, I don't want to let go of it yet because I haven't had enough time to do the pictures I want to do. But
Wow.
yeah, it's really exciting, and it really is a great energy source for me, and
Yeah.
stimulation and inspiration to go and do this. And this image is the cover of my book called Dancing My Nature, which I published a year ago, and that has to do with the 8 seasons of Lapland. So I had these dancers which I took out to the nature in different seasons, and they had small choreographies which emphasized the character of the light and that particular season, which they danced and then I photographed. And
Lovely.
this one is now under the midnight sun, the
Mm-hmm.
golden light. And this is taken like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And that summer is very different from this summer, which is in August, when the sun already is down for the night and the nights are dark. And this is like 5 o'clock in the morning when the sun is just coming up. And there's a river behind with the fog because the nights are getting cold. So the fog starts to lift from the water. So
Yeah.
yes, it plays a very important role, and I'm so happy to be here and being able to experience that.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned, I think it was before before we hit record, about a trip you took to capture some wonderful light.
Yes,
And then, so would you tell a little bit about that?
yes. I read somewhere and I saw images from Atacama Desert in Chile. All was discussion that it has the best light and the best sunsets and the best colors because the air is very, very dry there. So the color of the sunset is very special. And so I got this idea that I have to go to Atacama Desert, and so I went, and it was wonderful. Yes, it was a great trip, and I'm really glad I made it. And it was November, and when I came back the day after in November, we had the most stunning sunset in my backyard. And I was like, okay, did I have to travel all the way to Chile to see the
Mm-hmm.
same light and the color?
Yeah,
So sometimes you have
exactly.
to travel far to see close, you
Yeah.
know. But yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well put. Yeah, it's
yeah,
that's such a great reminder to us.
yeah,
We think we have to travel to exotic locations or anywhere but here.
yes, exactly.
Here being
Yeah,
wherever you are,
yeah.
and
But also ICM brings an additional thing to that because
yeah,
every sunset you take looks different.
yeah,
Everything you take, every image I take from my backyard, which I do a lot, they each look different, even though it's the same backyard. But if I did a
yeah,
traditional image of that every day, they would look so boring.
yeah. You'd probably find yourself starting to try to break out of that traditional, like it would get, like you said, boring.
Yeah, yeah,
You'd
absolutely.
be compelled to
Yeah,
start turning your camera upside down and doing other things and maybe post processing. But yeah, for sure. Well, I there's so much that I would love to continue learning about and talking about, and so I have a feeling we'll have a part two at some point later in the year. But for now, I'm curious about something that we also talked about, and it has to do with even the painting behind you. And what kind of advice or resources do you recommend to folks to help kind of keep their creative juices flowing and staying engaged with their art?
well, first of all, I recommend doing something every day. even if it's 10 minutes, because that keeps your creativity going and it lowers the fear of white canvas, let's say. So if you don't do if you have a long break, then you kind of start from the beginning every time after the long break. And I have a feeling that people often go in this creative rut or creative block because they want to stay in the safe bubble. They want to do the same thing over and over because they know that when I do the same thing, the results are good and I like them, and they kind of have a fear of failure, even though there's no such thing as failure in art.
Yeah.
But if you always stay in your same thing, you get bored, and then you have a creative block. And then you have a break, and then when you come back, it's even a higher step to take. So I really recommend that do something creative every day, even if it's 10 minutes. And no matter what it is, it can be writing or singing or dancing or photography or painting, whatever, as long as you kind of express yourself some way every day. And then get out of that safety bubble.
Yeah.
Get out of beyond your comfort zone and understand that we as artists, we go out and we explore things, and the explorations may lead to something very good or to something very terrible. But we need to do them. We need to do the explorations because otherwise we don't know what all is out there and what all we can create. And I think that's the difference between artists and those who do art as a hobby, is that we go out and we explore and we see, okay, didn't work, I have to do something else. Whereas someone who does it as a hobby, they go out, they have something in their mind, I want to go and do this, such a drawing, and then they go out and they execute it right away, without the exploration step in between. And then if it doesn't look like the way they had in mind, they are disappointed. And they are maybe even scared to continue because they feel that they don't know how to do this. And they feel that artists know what they are doing, but we don't know. We don't know. We have no idea. We just go out and we explore. And many times it doesn't work at all, but we don't say, oh, failure, oh my God, I failed, this is terrible. We say, oh, it didn't work, I have to try something else. And then you go and you try something else. And that, I think, is very important to keep your creativity going, is to understand these two things. Do something every day, go and explore. It's like walking. If you are walking and you trip, you fall forward. You don't say that, oh my God, I failed because I tripped. You went forward. You went a little bit.
I'll never walk again.
But you still went forward. You get up and you continue, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same way doing art. But too many times our expectations are in the result, in the end result. I have been the same way. I used to paint so that I had a bonfire going here next to me. And I would paint and I would realize that this is terrible and I would put it in the fire. I was so upset without understanding that this is all the exploration period. Now, luckily, I have learned.
you kept it. And the painting behind you is one of yours that has resulted from this practice, and it sounds like a lot of patience.
Yeah. And also a lot of painting over, a lot of letting go, a lot of understanding this doesn't work, but so what? Get some more white and paint over and do something else.
Yeah. It's so, I was watching, I did sign up for a workshop on abstract painting a few months ago. And in the first module, she was painting something and then she painted over partial of it. And then the next layer was partial over that. And pretty soon, whatever the original thing was gone. And I was like, wait a minute, what is that? What is that about? And it made me realize how much, we get attached to whatever, like if we make a mark, that mark stays, or that.
Yeah.
And that's when they used to get paralyzed with a blank canvas, is because it's like, if I make a mark, I can't go back.
Yeah,
it's like, yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to learn to let go. And that's the same with your images. If you take great pictures and you print them and someone wants to buy them, you let go. They go to a new home, you let go, and you never see that print again. But so what? You did your thing with it and you were ready, and then you have to let go.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
Yeah. So beautiful that you are exploring, experimenting. That painting is wonderful. I love the colors. It's so rich.
Thank you.
And setting this example, and bringing these lessons, because I think that's it. You and I were talking before about painting might not make us a better photographer, but painting impacts how we are as a person and how we relate to our creativity, which in turn then has some sort of influence on what happens when we pick up a camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very much they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Actually, they do. Even though they are so different, but they feed each other, let's say.
Yes.
They fulfill each other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, what's the best place for folks to connect with you? And would you tell us for a moment about the ICM community, the ICM PhotoMag?
Yeah. So together with Stephanie Johnson and Marek Patterson, we have something called the ICM PhotoMag Network community. And it's a paid membership community which has been running now for 3.5 years. And we have about 200 members all around the world, which is super exciting. Every time we have a live session and these people show up on my screen, it's like, what? People from Australia, New Zealand. Here I am sitting at the Arctic Circle at the end of the world, and I get to connect with all these people. It's just amazing. We have live sessions. We have 3 live sessions in every 2 months, because we work in a 2-month theme.
Okay.
We have a theme, and people work at it. They can post their results and comment, and etc. And then we, as leaders, also create content along that theme. So it's great. I just love it.
Yeah.
And it's been a big learning curve for me. Personally.
Well, it's an impressive community, and I've been a member now for a couple of years, I think. So many resources, and I find it very supportive. Like, I'm part of the Facebook group that's affiliated with the community, and there are people there that are, they're very interested in their own exploration and in supporting other people and learning together. So thank you for being part of creating that.
No problem. It's been a really great journey, and I think for me, the greatest learning curve has been that we have this theme. Like, for example, now we work on orange. And we of course decide what the themes are, but we still have no idea what we are doing. So now we have this theme, which is orange, and then I have to create content around orange and ICM. And out I go, and I end up with things, and that is a big learning curve.
Yeah.
So that I have found really fantastic.
That's part of that stretch that you talked about, like outside your comfort zone and trying something new and exploring. Like, I wouldn't have thought about, okay, what do I do with orange and ICM? But then it wakes your brain up to be noticing more than you would have otherwise.
Absolutely. And then we also have, together with Marek Patterson, we have 1.5 years ago started something called the ICM Photo Academy. And it's a hub with online self-study courses, on-demand self-study. So you can go, you buy a course, let's say elementary ICM or advanced ICM, or there are many different kinds of courses, and then you can work at it at your own pace. And You either can buy a version where you do get a review after the course, or if you want a version without a review, that's also possible. And that has also been a big learning curve to put together like the technical things and the mindset of ICM into these courses. So that has been also a lot of fun.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll make sure that there are links to that as well as to your personal website and the books that you mentioned. Congratulations on that. So lots to celebrate.
So what I wanted to mention about the book, Dancing My Nature, I'm so happy that it's out of print. So the physical book no longer is, but I do have an ebook version of it, which can be purchased at my website, artistkaisasiren.com. So that is still there. But it was the first book ever I published. So I was really not sure at all whether I would order like 100 or 1,000. So I went 500, something in between there. But it was exciting because you couldn't be sure, how it sells. But had I known, I would have ordered more. But now it's out.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, sometimes a little bit of scarcity is a good thing because then you can say it's sold out.
Yeah.
But lives on at least as an ebook, fortunately for us. So, right. It's been really wonderful reconnecting with you, learning more, chatting, learning more about your process. So thanks for spending this time with us, Kaisa.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and a great opportunity. I want to thank you, Beth, very much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we can have a part 2 one day.
I hope so. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you, and bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Let us know in the comments what was most useful or meaningful to you, and be sure to subscribe so that you're notified of future episodes. This channel is made possible in part by Nature Photography classes and their Inspired Creator Grant. You can learn more or submit your own application at naturephotographyclasses.com/inspiredcreator. Thank you again so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.